Good morning. Thank you, Sheila, for that introduction. I'm John Wilson, and glad to be here from Morehouse College. And if you don't know Morehouse by our most infamous graduate, Martin Luther King Jr., I'm guessing that you may know, and here he is. Good to see you, Eusebius. Good to see you. You may know Morehouse by another Morehouse man that we made this past May. You see here on the screens, Barack Obama. I was in office for 1 week when my phone rang. It was the White House, and that led to him being our graduation speaker, and we had a good time in May of 2013. So I would like to say that I'm happy to be here. I'm also, as Sheila said, a graduate and have been raising money for Morehouse for nearly 35 years, beginning when I was voted senior class president in 1979. I want to give a nod to Brian O'Connell, who opened us up and kind of set the tone for this retreat. And I was a little nervous at first because I've never been at a conference when someone opened up by talking about when the sun is going to burn out. So I almost left and went up on the mountain to reflect or call the wife and kids or something, but then he said we have about 1 billion years before that happens, so there's time. He also set the tone by making a reference to his theology and the relation between his theology and where he stands or moves around, and a number of people have. And I would say that the pressure is on me because I am the speaker in the early morning of the third day. Get that or not, if you paid attention while you're in theology school. That might mean that I have to roll the stone away, I suppose. But if I were to answer in kind, I am a Baptist, and not just a Baptist, but a son and grandson of Baptist preachers. So what that means is we start here, and by the time we finish, we're walking on the tables. That's what Baptists do. I thank Sheila Gastro for the invitation. I thank all the higher ed officials here and corporate representatives, and I especially thank Rip Rapson and Bill Moses and my many friends at the Kresge Foundation for underwriting this initiative. Kresge Foundation has a long-standing, strong commitment to broadening the frontiers of educational opportunity and fostering sustainable economic development, and I could not thank them more for their extraordinary work. My assignment this morning, on this final morning of the conference, is to probe in some creative way the dynamics of the relationship between philanthropic institutions, corporations, and the world of higher education. That's not a huge challenge for me because I've been kind of living at that crossroads for most of my career, including stops at MIT and GW, the White House, and now Morehouse. So drawing on that background, I want to share with you several perspectives on institutional advancement. That's what I've been asked to talk about, institutional advancement. And my perspectives may seem a bit outside of the box, but I've decided to approach this with a biographical bent. Again, there's something about this nexus, this intersection between higher education and business and philanthropy. I simply want to share with you 4 lessons that I've learned throughout my career. I need to pause and say that I'm actually haunted by Professor Habib's comment. That comment being, the most underprepared students cannot be the responsibility of the most impoverished institutions. That's a very powerful statement, And what I want to say about it is that means we have two choices. Either we're going to convince the wealthy institutions to take up this work, and it would be new work for them, or the other option is to get a few relatively poor institutions to surge in strength and in wealth and prove the concept. I'm about the latter, okay? I've been around long enough to know that you can talk to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, those places all you want, but they're not going to do this work. They're not. So the question is, who's going to do it? And the challenge is to get enough heft, enough strength, enough wealth to be able to do this work capably. And so that's what my career has been about. Institutional agency, all right? I've heard the word intentionality. That's what it's about. Or as I have said, I was, before I took the job, my job at the White House, I was writing a book at GW, and the name of the book, I had to put it down in order to take this job at the White House. It was called Needy to Nimble. Needy to nimble. Going from needy to nimble. That is what the work is about. So I want to share with you 4 lessons that I've learned in this at this crossroads between business and higher ed. Before I do, I want to share a story. A story that kind of captures my own evolution in this in the field of advancement, and it is a story that I think is pursuant to all the themes of this conference. The story of how the leadership of one black college in America was trying to push their institution to an entirely new engagement with the key players in the philanthropic marketplace. They were well aware of the increase in capital campaigning in higher education, and they wondered, why not us? Why can't we do that? And so the president and vice president of this institution, vice president for advancement, they felt if they could just get some of the key leaders of the corporate community to visit their campus, they could effectively make the case and perhaps get a large gift and turn a big corner. They felt that in spite of having a lot of bright students and dedicated professors and a number of notable alumni, their needs were still countless, especially a small endowment and poor facilities. And so they felt they just needed one transformational gift to prove themselves worthy in the eyes of many, including their own alumni. And like many other college and university leaders, they targeted a huge and generous company, and they worked hard to get the CEO to visit their campus like a lot of others were. And finally, the CEO from that company decided that he was going to visit this HBCU. And the president and VP could not have been more excited as they prepared to launch what they hoped would be a validating partnership with this CEO and this company. In the weeks leading up to the visit, the VP took great care to ensure that everything would go well because he knew that the president was a stickler for detail. So predictably, late in the afternoon on the day before this campus visit, the president insisted on a walkthrough. All right, I'm going to walk through. He wanted to know what would happen at each stage of the CEO's visit. And all seemed perfect as they neared the penultimate moment when the CEO was scheduled to visit a classroom in session with our most iconic and notable professor in action there in the classroom. And the VP walked the president by this classroom, and which would also serve as the scene of the ask. That's where he's going to ask the CEO for some money. But as the president scanned the classroom, he arrived and scanned the classroom, he was visibly shocked at what he saw. The president asked, "What have you done?" And the bewildered vice president answered, "Mr. President, what do you mean?" The president responded, "This room, what happened to it?" The VP innocently and proudly responded, "Oh, you must mean the paint. Yeah, I painted the room. I had the room painted, and I had the floor waxed, make it look first rate. And up on the ceiling, there was clear evidence of a roof leak, so we patched that up and made it look nice. And I fixed a couple of the broken windows and even repaired the broken doorknob. The president then scolded his VP and said, "Why ever would you do all of that just before he comes? Don't you know anything about fundraising? The last thing you should have done was to upgrade this room. The entire key is to have him to see our problems." So the VP replied, "Yes, but don't we want him focused on the learning without distraction?" Said the frustrated president, "No, why would he give to us if you remove the clear evidence of our needs just before he arrives?" The VP was deflated, and he felt certain that his job was in jeopardy depending on the outcome of the visit. He did not feel that he had made a mistake. Instead, he realized that he and his president had a serious philosophical disjuncture, a difference about what makes wealthy and powerful people give. The next day, the visit went off without a hitch, and eventually they received a modest, unrestricted gift from the company, much to the president's delight. But it wasn't long before the VP left that institution based on the persistent conflict between his outlook and that of the president regarding how best to partner with the corporate and philanthropic community. All right? So here's the question. As an advancement VP or as a campus representative, would you have arranged to have that classroom painted, or would you have seen the broken environment as part of the sell? You get the question? That is the question. And that describes kind of my evolution in this field of fundraising. You might think about where you sit in that spectrum, but I want to share with you 4 perspectives on this issue of fundraising and fundraising from our campuses. And I'm going to come back to the story to illuminate it more as I finish. There's a saying we had at MIT: perspective is worth 100 points of IQ. Perspective is worth 100 points of IQ. Okay, you may be broken, bewildered, stuck in your life, but if you find a way to change your perspective, you can surge in intelligence. You get to perspective is worth 100 points of IQ. Higher education is clearly among the most rapidly changing industries in the world right now, and we've been talking about those issues throughout this conference. Increased accountability, performance-based public funding, customer scrutiny about return on investment, increased competition, new definitions about what it means to be a prepared student, a student who is ready for the world. That's all going to lead to a set of new metrics, and there are going to be some winners and losers, and if you're not already concerned about that, you may be behind. That conversation is very active. So in America, one of many ways we are translating that in our context is this: to be tuition-driven as an institution, to be tuition-driven is to live in a home that is built by a volcano, all right? We must be in move or die mode. You have to move away from being tuition driven. The traditional support from public sources and from families, it needs to be supplemented, and the best supplementation is private philanthropy. Private philanthropy is where enlightened institutions must go now, and that's the theme of this conference. In the U.S., there's $300 billion given away every year, $300 billion in private gifts, $41 billion of it to education, all of education, and $31 billion of that $41 billion, 75% goes to higher education, all right? $31 billion available every year to higher education. What's ironic to me is that 20 institutions, the top 20 institutions, get a third of that money, all right? $500 million each, a third of that money. And I've always wondered, why does that happen? How did they get a third of that money? And I'm going to give you 4 lessons very quickly in my last 5 minutes. First, they have a powerful value proposition, a very powerful value proposition. You have to pay attention to your value proposition. You have to get beyond the Me Too category of fundraising. All right? It's not Me Too. Most institutions are trying to raise 5 things: professorships, scholarships, buildings, endowment funds, and then there's this 5th category called academic programming and research. That's where your institutional voice comes from. That's how institutions raise a lot of money. That's how MIT got a gift of $400 million, and that was for neuroscience, the mysteries of the brain. That's how Tufts University got a gift of $100 million to support microfinance initiatives in the third world. And yes, Harvard University, already with an endowment of $30 billion, is just announced a couple of weeks ago a capital campaign to raise $6.5 billion. And what they're selling, what they're going to try to do is they want that kind of support in order to solve such problems as low-cost energy in the developing countries, new research on diseases, stem cells, the brain, the environment. Their value proposition is focused on the problems facing humanity. Is your value proposition like that? And can it be? Can you talk about yourself that is not so narcissistic where you're saying, here's what I need, but you need to be saying, here's what I need you to help me do for the world? There is a difference. That's a perspective difference. Second lesson, better to go after investments rather than gifts. I learned that lesson in MIT. I took over an office. We were raising $18 million a year, and I was told I had to get us to $50 million a year. And the way we did it was we started going after investments. We said that we're not going to go after support for the next year or two. We're going to go after support for the next 4 or 5 years, and we're going to go after much bigger support. And that meant we were after investments. The third lesson is we need to educate the corporate and philanthropic communities to learn how to see our core strengths. I got myself in trouble when I got to the White House because I said, look, I got a call from a reporter on the first day who asked me, what lessons will you bring to this job to tell HBCUs about that you learned from MIT? And I said, well, that one of the challenges of HBCUs and a lot of nonprofits is when we go out and raise money, the soundtrack you hear is a violin. What I learned at MIT is the soundtrack you need to hear when you go out and raise money is a trumpet. The violin evokes sadness, and the trumpet evokes greatness. And we need to put down the violin and pick up the trumpet. We need to talk about not how broken we are, but how whole we are. That education is very, very important. And then the fourth lesson is a return to that story that I started out with, and that is of the professor. The professor, the president, and the VP had a different perspective, a very different perspective. And one thought, in a nutshell, one thought that fundraising was an appeal to conscience, and the other thought that fundraising was an appeal to ego. I believe it's an appeal to ego. Let me outline these things just with a couple of slides in terms of the shift we need to make, shifting from violins to trumpets. When you are on the violin side, as the president was in that story, you might emphasize we were born in a hostile environment. But you're on the trumpet side, in spite of the circumstances of our birth, we have a basic distinctiveness that is worth enhancing. Violin says, please fix our brokenness. Trumpet says, please partner with us for the nation's or the world's wholeness. Violin says, help us. Trumpet says, help yourself. Violin says, correct the past. Trumpet says, create the future. That's a difference in perspective, and it's pretty fundamental. Another difference is, appeal to conscience versus an appeal to ego. Missionary savior mentality that people give money have versus a pioneer explorer mentality. One, the mindset is medicate. The other is empower. There's a difference between disaster relief philanthropy and venture philanthropy. There's a difference between a save the day gift and a create tomorrow investment. In one case, you give because this is our crisis. The other case, you give because this is your legacy. You get the difference in perspective. So let me close with this in my last minute I have. Some of you are wondering about the image in the middle of my title slide. Well, in thinking about your focus and themes, I was constantly drawn to the single notion that was kind of a whisper in my mind's ear as I prepared for this, and that is freedom. The notion of freedom. I believe that what we are all after as we try to strengthen our institutions is freedom. We are all seeking funding in order to shape our educational environments into very special places where those who live and learn and work there are as free as they can be, free to explore. We need a free environment. And not one HBCU in America is free. And it sounds as if a lot of institutions here are not yet free. We're not yet where we want to be as a learning environment, an optimal learning environment. One of the things, the first official duties I had as the president of Morehouse College, I got a call from the U.S. Postal Service about a week in the office, and they wanted to use our campus as a site to unveil this stamp. This is a very important year for Morehouse. It's not only the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's iconic I Have a Dream speech, but it's also the 100th anniversary of Morehouse being Morehouse. We changed our name to Morehouse 100 years ago. And it's the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, all right? And so U.S. Postal Service calls and says, we want to unveil this stamp, and I had to stand there, and it was a very special occasion on our campus, but it set the tone for my presidency, because I said my presidency is going to be about freedom. We're going to get this institution to a new level of freedom. So to wrap up, and I commend that to you, and I have this stamp hanging in my office, big, huge stamp hanging in my office, and I have my whole campus oriented around a new kind of freedom that we have to get to. So to close this out in this pivotal year, I want to end by tying all together all three of the themes of the anniversaries, the 50th of the dream, the 100th of the name of Morehouse, and the 150th of emancipation, and show you our dreamer, a Morehouse man, making his own comment on freedom.
And I come here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. And as I said to a group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennysonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with the pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation.
I think we all need our own Emancipation Proclamation. It is about freedom. That's what we're about, and that's what I commend you to be about as well. Thank you very much.